Okay, good morning everybody. It's Thursday the 18th of May. This is Alan in the New Anglia Growth Hub. Just first of all to say thank you very much for joining us on the line. It's the first time we've had a virtual meeting like this, so if you find it helpful, then we'd be more than happy to run these as a more regular feature. We've also got some Growth Hub advisors on the line, and also Jason, Programs Manager for New Anglia LEP, is joining us on the line as well. So welcome to this session. And also just want to say a thank you to you as economic development officers, because you may not know this, but actually EDOs lead the way in terms of referrals for the grants ahead of events, businesses finding us online, membership organisations, their bank, professional services or other partners. So you're an extremely important, helpful and valuable group of people to us. So please do keep those referrals coming in. So moving on, how you can get involved this morning. We want this to be an interactive session, so what you're looking out for is the thing that resembles a small hand. That's the raise your hand button. That tells me that you want to say something, and we can bring you into the call. If you'd rather not speak, then you can type your question in. We've actually had a couple of questions on email, which we'll come to shortly. You can type your question in. I'm not quite exactly sure what it says on your screen, but if you can see a text box or a questions box, that's where you can type your questions in. If you've got just quick questions as we go through, then happy to take those. If you've got any, I guess, more discussion topics or any other comments you want to make at the end, then we can take those. But any quick questions throughout, then more than happy to take those. So some of you might be new. If you're not sure who we are, then just a couple of minutes on us. The New Anglia Growth Hub is part of the Growth Hub network, 38 growth hubs in England, and all come under the banner of the Department for Business. So we're New Anglia Growth Hub. That means we cover Norfolk and Suffolk, and we're out there to support businesses, whether they're starting or growing, and we're funded by the European Regional Development Fund, and all that really means is that the service is free at the point of use. We're contract managed by Suffolk Chamber of Commerce, and we work in partnership with a number of other stakeholder groups and membership organisations. So what do we do? Well, we're a single point of contact, as I said, for any growing business in Norfolk or Suffolk, any sector, any size. We don't sell anything. The service is free, it's impartial, it's confidential. We come to you, we complete, this is the industry jargon, we complete a business diagnostic. We find out what your needs are. We'll provide you with some information. We can also broker in third-party support, and you can use the service as much or as little as you like. And in fact, most businesses do come back to us. Nearly 3/4 of the businesses we speak to will come back and ask for some more help. And some of you may have seen this before. This is the Rasch map, and this is just some of the businesses that we've seen. So really, this is just to show that we're not just in the towns, we're in the farm businesses, the rural businesses, the seaside towns, and I think we've got a pretty reasonable coverage to make sure that we're active and serving Norfolk and Suffolk as a whole. So let's get into it. I'm going to bring in Jason at this point. Good morning, Jason. You're going to tell us.
Good morning.
You're going to tell us about some of the the changes to the grants, and it's not called micro grant scheme anymore, is it?
Yes, some pretty significant changes are currently being taking place in the scheme. For those of you who know about the history of some of the schemes, we obviously had our Growing Business Fund, which was originally £25,000 to £500,000 in grants, and we introduced below that some years ago a small grant scheme which was very successful. And the original aim was for the micro grant scheme to sit below the small grant scheme and Growing Business Fund. One of the things we've learned over the last few months is actually what we can do is, which is actually what we're going to do now, is we're actually merging the micro grant scheme and small grant scheme. So from now on, we're going to lose the micro grant scheme as a scheme and just call it all small grant scheme. And this is going to cover grants between £1,000 and £25,000, up to 20% contribution rate, which is higher if your business is located in an assisted area. And the other good news, it also means that up to £25,000 businesses can also access revenue as well as capital funding. And those are changes which are taking place essentially as of today. You're the first people to be told about these changes, and we will be rolling out those changes and publicising them as wide as we possibly can over the coming months.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Just want to, William's on standby, he's going to talk about eligibility in just a minute, but just before we get into that, I just want to cover off some of the benefits, and I think this is something we just need to spend just a minute or so thinking about as to why businesses would be interested in grant funding. So this is the why would businesses care slide, and I've put this into 7 key benefits of the small grant scheme. So the first one is that it enables projects or business development plans to actually start. So it's an enabler, but it could also be that those businesses may happen further down the line, but this will actually help to speed up those plans. So it's about gaining an advantage. As Jason said, it saves up to 20%. You might not need all of that, but up to 20% or 30% in an assisted area status. If you're not quite sure, you can ask us. We've got a map as well of the assisted areas. So that makes your plans more affordable. It can be used to help launch new products. That helps to attract new customers and increase turnover. It can help to increase production. Again, that's linked to turnover. Help to increase efficiency. So we're looking at reducing costs and therefore increasing profits. It can help businesses to create jobs. You don't have to, but it could help to create some future employment. That enables growth and sustainability. And the grant is actually returned to the business as cash back. So that money can actually be reinvested into other plans. And again, that enables growth. So those are the benefits of the small grant scheme. William, in a minute. Where are you? There you go. William's going to talk you through eligibility. William, it's kind of broken down into 2 stages, isn't there? The business eligibility and the project eligibility.
Yeah, that's right, Alan. Before I go out to look at a business that's applying for a micro grant or potentially applying for it, I look at the business itself and see if it's eligible and fits with our criteria, and I can do a lot of that research before we go. And then the second thing when you get there is really, is the project itself eligible? And we'll talk through the details of that in a moment as well. Essentially, we're looking for projects that are ready to go, but they haven't yet started. That's the key thing as well. And we're supporting growing businesses. So in terms of the business eligibility, the business itself must be trading, ideally for a minimum of 6 months, which means that we can't support startup businesses with this grant scheme. We'd like to see a minimum of 6 months trading figures to see how they're doing. But any structure of business can apply, so that can be a sole trader, limited company, charity, or what have you, effectively any recognised trading entity. It must obviously be an SME under the EU rules, which is fewer than 250 employees, the balance sheet less than 43 million euros and the turnover less than 50 million euros. And if it's owned by another company, we need to look at the overall structure and ownership as well, just to work that out. The key thing is that it must be based in, or the economic activity must be taking place in Norfolk or Suffolk. And that will help support companies coming in and inward investing in the region as well. So going on to the next slide then, Alan, looking at sectors, there is a list of sectors which are not eligible. Putting it round the other way, most sectors are open, but the following few are not eligible. So retail, we look at their SIC code. So any retail business with a SIC code beginning with 45 or 47 is not eligible. And then through the rest of the state aid rules, primary agriculture and horticulture aren't eligible. And then the other things like fisheries, agriculture, forestry, and so on. So the ones that we tend to meet are the agriculture and horticulture and some forestry businesses in this region. They're not eligible, but there are other grant schemes that would support them as well. So we can look at what else have we got in the toolbox that we can support them with.
Sorry, well, just to say also, the one that sits obviously between 4.5 and 4.7 is 4.6. That is wholesale, which is eligible. So it's just 4.5 and 4.7, but 4.6 wholesale is fine.
Okay, thanks, Alan. So then going on looking at the project eligibility itself, So the minimum project size is £5,000, which would entitle people to a grant of £1,000. I need to say that there's no maximum project size. There's just a maximum grant size that applies. So once you hit the maximum grant size, you can't get any more out of it, but you can still have a much larger project associated with it. The project must be ready to commence, so that planning permission does need to be in place if anybody's doing building work, and you must be able to evidence the remaining funds. So they must be able to come from either the company itself or from a bank loan or asset finance or any other type of match. You can't use other public funds as match funding, so things like lottery fund or other grant schemes, you can't use those as the match themselves. And the project costs themselves must be eligible. So we've got a table of that right at the very end. But just to go on to reinforce then the criteria that the business needs to be doing at least one of the things on this list: increasing the production, increasing its efficiency, so doing something internally in the business that helps it increase what it's doing and hence grow that way. It must be, or it could be, launching a new product or a new service into the marketplace. All of these things are helping with its expansion and growth activity. It could also be creating jobs. That's a nice to have, but it's not an essential requirement for this grant scheme, unlike our other complementary growing business fund grant. And again, we have to think of this in the context of a project that represents growth. So it's not for things like for-like purchases and upgrades, putting a coat of paint on an office or something like that there. It doesn't really cover regular costs of stock, which would be something coming out of your normal working capital, and things like wages, salaries, that kind of thing doesn't cope with that, because that we expect the business to be able to support that in its own right through its own cash flow. This is all to do with helping the business grow, projects that help it grow, doing one of these things on the list. So if we look now at the project eligibility, the eligible costs, there's a table there which you can read for yourself, but essentially it covers capital items like construction, purchase of premises, new fixtures and fittings and furniture, plant and equipment, IT equipment, all sort of things that you can see and associate as being capital costs. But then it will also provide for the payment of costs associated with revenue costs, such as consultancy service fees from an external consultant, creation of a new website related to the proposal itself, and so on. And you can see the sort of the caveats on those costs on the right hand column. And again, this all has to be thought of in the context of something that's helping the business itself grow. It can be the proposal can be any one of the row items or a mix of the row items in that table. So I think that covers all the main levels, or the main things that we have to consider in terms of project and business eligibility. I think Alan's now going to talk about some of the businesses who have been successful so far in getting a grant.
Thank you, Will. I'm going to skip past that one, but I'm going to bring in Glen. Good morning, Glen.
Hello, Alan. Can you hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear. Do you want to just spend a minute or so, just talk us through Aquablast, if you can, please?
Yeah, sure. So Aquablast were one of the first companies to get through the microgrants scheme, and they've been around for about 28 years, and they're quite an unusual company. They specialise in using ultra-high pressure water systems, and they were using that initially primarily in the offshore oil and gas sector for coal cutting systems, because you can use water safely. It doesn't create sparks or anything like that in hazardous environments. So they were using this system for surface preparation on offshore assets, and also for cutting stuff on rigs and so on. As you'll know, there's been a downturn in the oil and gas sector, and they've been focusing more on using their ultra-high pressure systems to recycle crawler tracks. So if you've you ever noticed in roadwork systems and so on, you'll see these diggers that have got rubber tracks which are steel reinforced. And up until very recently, when those tracks wore out, which they do frequently, they have to be put in landfill, which isn't a very eco-friendly way of disposing of these things. So they, at Aquablast, set up a new branch of the company called Recycler. And this uses, again, ultra-high pressure water, around 60,000 per square inch pressure. And they feed the rubber tracks into this system, and it blasts the tracks at this incredibly high pressure and removes the rubber from the steel reinforcement, turning it into a sort of crumb system, which can then be recycled for various other purposes. And then, of course, the remaining steel can be recycled in the normal way. And they're still testing this system out. They're still developing it, but they're having some success, and they're having discussions with a lot of rubber track manufacturers at the moment with a view to getting arrangements sorted out to recycle their tracks, and it's all looking very positive. However, they only had a small forklift truck, which was about 2.5 tons, and these tracks are very, very heavy. So they needed to put more volume of these tracks through their system, and they wanted to buy a larger fork truck. And that's when they turned to us, and so they put in an application. So they wanted to buy a second-hand 7-ton fork truck, which is going to cost them £10,000. And we were able to provide them with a grant of £2,000, which went through relatively quickly, and seen success. And now they are happily using their 7-ton fork truck and shoveling through huge quantities of these rubber tracks, and saving the environment in the process. So yeah, good success story all around.
Thank you, Glenn. That was the longest minute ever.
Beautiful. Sorry. I'm looking carried away.
Beautifully described. No, thank you very much, Glenn. I'm just amazed we could hear you in the dark depths of Norfolk. Your signal's normally terrible, but thank you very much, Glenn. Right, so let's just whiz quickly through how to apply. Now, I'm going to bring William back in here, because I mean the first step, isn't it, to have a conversation with the client, and then we'll issue with the form and help them complete it. How much help can you give them on the forms?
So we can help them with the words in the forms. So the form itself provides a narrative about the business itself, and what the business is going to do, and how this grant scheme is going to help that business. And that's really a story that is being told. I mean, you've got to remember that the panel who will be making the judgment and MREs who do the due diligence won't ever see that business or speak to it directly. So if you like, we're the interface between the business and everybody else upstream of us. So it's important that we get the message right and enough information in there so that people can see what the business is doing, how the grant scheme is going to help, and what it's going to do, how it fits in with their overall growth plans. And all of those sections are asked for in the application form. It's just when we see some people, they'll probably put a sentence into one of the sections which doesn't really explain anything, so it's helpful to expand out on that and help them write it down. I mean, they have all the information in their head, or maybe on their website, or in publicity material, so it's just a matter of extracting it. There's then, we can also check that the numbers add up. Surprisingly, many people can't add numbers up, and it's useful to make sure that that all adds and makes sense. And then we help them with the procurement evidence. So they've got to show prices for everything that they've got to buy. Everything under £25,000 only needs one price quote or example of price for it. So we can help them relate the tables on the form to the procurement evidence that they've got to supply. And so that effectively creates the top level and wrapper of the application form. Behind that has to come then supporting evidence, such as their current accounts, their management accounts, their cash flow forecast, and other supporting evidence associated with that. Now, we can't create that for them. That has to come from the business, but we can make sure that it all exists and that it is assembled and present it in such a form that that it makes it as easy as possible for the NWES team to do the due diligence on it. So, summary, we help them with the words on the form, help them to explain their story, and help them make sure that all the supporting documentation exists and relates to the form itself.
Okay, thanks, Will. And I'm just going to bring in Jason again, because Jason, if you could just summarise some of the key changes. We've heard about what the grant is, who it's for, what costs can be included, but if you could just summarise the changes that are happening as of today, please.
Absolutely, Alan, be delighted to. Oh yeah, so the first change is it's now called Small Grant Scheme, so because we've essentially merged the Micro Grant Scheme and the Small Grant Scheme, and the new branding, which will come out in the next few weeks, will reflect that. As part of that process, the maximum grant ceiling has been increased to £25,000, so essentially it's now a scheme running from £1,000 to £25,000. And because we've done that, it also means that businesses can apply for revenue funding up to £25,000, which they previously couldn't do because there was a restriction. It was before it was 10. We've also tried to widen the scope of the types of businesses that are eligible. We've had lots of discussions about this, and we now want to include tourism, hospitality and accommodation, so they've been included. And the last bullet point is probably the most important one. We are currently we're in the final stages of confirming a simpler and a faster application process, and as William was saying just a few moments ago, the Growth Hub advisors and the team will actually sit down with the business and help them complete the paperwork and get the paperwork they need to ensure that they have a successful application. So yes, there is paperwork that the business will need to be able to provide and show when they're applying, but the growth advisors will sit down with the businesses and guide them through that process. And we are hoping to introduce a very quick application process for grants that are less than 10,000, but we'll be able to provide you with more details about that in the coming weeks.
Okay, thank you, Jason.
Is that all right, Alan?
Yeah, thank you, Jason. Alison, are you on the line? I can hear us okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you have a question for Jason? Do you want to ask it then? It's a bit loud, but go on.
Can you actually hear me?
Yeah, that's better. We can hear you. What's your question?
Yeah, so I've got quite a few questions on sort of sectors, really, and about who's eligible and who isn't. So firstly, I have had an inquiry in the past from a pub with accommodation and a microbrewery project as well. And it seemed that some parts of what they do is eligible and some parts isn't. So I just wanted to know about sort of that whole sector and if it's eligible now or not.
Okay, good question. We've decided to, we've looked at the guidance, and this is the guidance, the ERDF guidance that we have to adhere to, and the guidance says that accommodation, tourism, hospitality is eligible. For that reason we'd like to include it. So it sounds like most of what you've described would be eligible, but obviously we just have to double check on a case-by-case basis, but there'd be no reason why a project like that wouldn't be able to come forward and receive support from the scheme. So
would a pub be eligible?
Yeah, there's no reason why a pub wouldn't be eligible for support through the programme.
Okay, because that's been raised as a question mark before now. So is that something that's changed, or is it your understanding that it's always been eligible?
Well, you'll appreciate this. Some of the state aid rules, there are some grey areas, and we've been trying to clarify where we stand with some of those grey areas. So, for example, as Alan said earlier, retail is not eligible, but wholesale is. Tourism, hospitality and accommodation is eligible, but obviously it would depend exactly what the project is and exactly what they're going to do before we could obviously make that final decision.
But as a business, that sector be included?
As a business, that sector is included in eligibility.
Okay.
Yeah, it's William here, Alison. I would guess that, you know, a pub that wanted to buy new furniture and paint the walls and that kind of thing, which might be an expense for them, that project wouldn't be eligible because that's just refurbishing what they've already got. But if it's wanting to do something different, something that adds into what it's already doing and showing how that would grow the business, then that project is more likely to be eligible. You know, so off the top of my head, I can't think what that would be, but you know, bringing in food manufacturing or something like that there on site might be something that we would consider.
So in other words, it's got to fit into the criteria of the grant still.
Yeah.
Okay, but all that criteria, the criteria on sectors, is that effectively set by DCLG and you have to comply with their guidance?
Yes, absolutely. And there are, as you can well imagine, the guidance is not as clear as it could be. And we've spent some time trying to clarify exactly what we can and can't support under the programme. And what we want to try and do is support as many businesses as we possibly can.
Okay, that's really useful. So I've got a couple more. Can I throw them in?
Go for it.
The other question in terms of sectors, this is an issue that's come up with another ERDF grant scheme that I'm involved in, but I guess it'll be an issue for this scheme as well. We have got businesses applying for grants who are not retailers. They are, for example, wholesalers, distributors, manufacturers, but they have a retail element to their business. So they might be a factory that has a shop, for example. Does that then exclude them from the scheme because they have retail as part of their operation?
No, a manufacturing business has to sell its goods somewhere. So if the project is related to the manufacturing side of the business, then it would be eligible. I mean, we'd have to look at the detail to see you know, how much of the business is retail and how much of it is manufacturing, but it's not immediately ineligible for an application.
Okay, that's great. And you primarily...
Can I just clarify on that, William?
Yeah.
We have applications come through for Growing Business Fund on a regular basis, which are part retail and part wholesale. And what we simply say is, if it relates to the non-retail side, it is eligible. If it relates to the retail side, then it's not eligible. And obviously, the growth advisor will guide and help the business through that process.
Yeah.
I mean, that seems reasonable and logical, but I know what DCLG can do.
I'm not commenting.
Yeah, you might say that. We couldn't comment.
Okay. Which areas have got assisted area status? Is that a long list or is it just a quick one you can just give me an idea of?
So in a nutshell, it is parts of Ipswich and parts of Lowestoft and Great Yarmouth. But if you'd like, I can send you the assisted areas map. It is just those three areas, isn't it?
Yeah, and a little bit running down Brantham, Manningtree way.
Yes, that's right.
Well.
So South Suffolk.
Yeah.
How long is it for a business from sort of getting in touch with you and then having a completed application to actually them getting the money in their hand?
Okay, as I was explaining earlier, we're in the final stages of refining the process. What we're hoping to do for grants for less than 10,000, our ambition is to have a 5-day approval process. And that 5 days will be once the business has completed all the application form and has got all the paperwork that's needed to approve it. So we're hoping for a 5 working day, so it's a week essentially, for anything under 10,000. Anything above 10,000 up to 25,000, we're trying to reduce the timescale down to about 5 weeks because those those projects tend to be a bit larger. What we need to remember is that's once the application has been completed and it's got all the paperwork. What we often find is the delay is not in the approval process. The delay is because there may be a particular document or something that's not quite clear, so the advisor will have to go back and talk to the business until they're clarified. So it's really important that the businesses can provide the advisors with the information they require as soon and as quickly as possible, so we can get them through that decision-making process. Because at the end of the day, we want to give as many businesses as possible as much money as we can within the rules of the scheme. Yeah. Does that make sense?
No, that's fantastic because, you know, businesses always need money quickly, so that's great.
Absolutely.
Sorry, Alison, just to emphasise what Jason was saying, don't give them the 5 days figure. Tell them it's 5 days after they have completed all of the paperwork. I have a pile of paperwork sitting in here from different applications where, you know, it just doesn't make sense, or it's partially completed, or we can't figure out how it all adds up or whatever. And that then we have to go back to them. They're busy and they're off on holiday or something like that there, and there's just an iteration which is slow. So they have to make sure that they put everything together right first time and help us to help them, really. That's what I would say.
Absolutely. Got that message.
Okay. Sorry, have you got, is that everything, Alison?
I had one final question, which is just about procurement. So obviously a lot of these businesses are going to be buying things with the grant money that we're providing. Do they have to evidence the procurement process? Do they have to, for instance, get quotes, or, you know, do we have any rules around that?
Yes, the procurement rules around this scheme were a little unclear for several months, and we've had several meetings with colleagues at DCOG just to completely clarify the procurement rules. Essentially, if an item costs less than £25,000, they need to provide us with evidence of what that cost is. So, and it doesn't have to be a written quote, it could be something downloaded from a website to say, this is the item and this is how much it costs. If the item is more than £25,000, they have to give us 3 price comparisons, and that could be from 3 different websites or suppliers. But the growth advisors and the team will provide businesses with all the help and the advice they need to make sure that procurement is in place. And we want to try and keep that as simple as possible as we can, because we know businesses are busy and they've got other things they need to be getting on with.
Absolutely. That's great. Thank you very much for that. That was really helpful.
That's all right. Good questions. Thank you, Alison.
Yeah, thank you very much, Alison. So we're just about wrapping up now. Just some final thoughts. If you are speaking to businesses, manage their expectations. Obviously refer them, but the words you're looking for are you may be or there might be. Obviously we don't want people coming here just expecting that they will get the funding. That's obviously subject to application and review. But so manage the expectations, but please do encourage them to get in touch with us. Small grant schemes, just obviously one thing that we can tap into. There may be other things as well. The Growing Business Fund, as mentioned earlier, that carries on as normal from 25 up to £500,000, but that is related to job creation. But even if you've spoken to business and you don't think that they're eligible for any grant funding, we still want to hear from them, because we can look at other ways perhaps of raising finance. So if you're coming across growing businesses, then refer them to us anyway. And how you do that, well, if you've already got an existing relationship with the Growth Hub advisor that covers your local authority area, just drop them an email, send the company details and contact name of the business and so on. If you can, remember to copy in the office here, just in case that advisor is away. So growthhub@newanglia.co.uk, that's monitored all the time by someone here in the office. And if you want to just pick up the phone and give us a call, just ask a couple of questions before you refer a business to us, then by all means pick up the phone as well. We're on 0300 333 6536. So that's just about it. My thanks to everybody that's contributed, to William, to Jason as well. So thank you very much, and we'll speak to you all very soon. Thank you. Goodbye.